Welcome to the warm, cozy blanket channel. If you like what I do, give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. It really motivates me to keep reading more. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. So make yourselves comfortable and cozy, and I'll start my story. Frozen Terror. The night I became the Watcher, a chilling survival story. The wipers flailed helplessly against the thick, wet snowflakes that battered the windshield. The car roared as its wheels spun uselessly in the slushy white mass. Andrei tried revering, but the old Nissan jerked and shuddered before coming to a halt, stuck fast in a snowdrift. He shifted into neutral and leaned back into his seat, exhaling sharply. Orenburg was still about 60 miles away, and he'd made it most of the way before losing control on the icy road, skidding off into a ditch. Now, here he was, stranded. Andrei pulled on his hat and gloves and stepped out into the biting cold. Around him stretched an eerie silence, brittle and sharp like glass. The gray sky dumped endless flakes of snow, lazily shifting clouds across the horizon. He surveyed the scene. The front end of the car was buried up to the hood, branches from some bush jutting out of the drift like skeletal fingers. Resigned, Andrei glanced at the dark tire tracks he'd left when he careened off the road with a string of curses, landing first on the shoulder and then deeper into the snowbank until the car finally gave up. Shivering, he climbed back inside, rubbing his already numb hands together, and grabbed his phone. It was nearly 4 o'clock. Winter nights fell early, and time was running out. A polite woman's voice on the other end informed him that the roads were impassable, and the tow truck wouldn't arrive until morning, if even then. Her words dripped with detachment, spoken by someone warm and safe, while he sat freezing in the middle of nowhere. Anxiety crept over Andrei. He wasn't cut out for this kind of survival. The thought of running out of gas and having the cold slowly squeeze the life out of him like toothpaste from a tube made his hands tremble. He hadn't heard the storm warning. The blizzard had started after he'd driven far enough from the city, turning the highway into an endless expanse of frozen chaos within hours. He called emergency services next. Hopping a sturdy SUV could pull his little sedan free, so he could continue his journey. Another calm, indifferent voice answered, explaining they'd try their best, but likely wouldn't reach him until dawn. "It's impossible to get to you right now," she enunciated slowly, as if speaking to a child. "I suggest looking around. There are villages near the highway. You might be close to one." "Thanks," Andrei whispered, his voice hollow, lowering the phone onto his lap. The oppressive silence pressed in from all sides, unbroken even by the music blasting through the speakers. It was the kind of silence that carried the metallic tang of loneliness, impervious to sound or human cries. But Andrei refused to give up. Again and again, he gunned the engine, the car snarling like a trapped beast. Snow melted on the hot hood only to refreeze instantly, coating the metal in ice. storm wrapped itself around the vehicle, lulling him into a false sense of defeat. After an hour of futile attempts, frustration boiled over. With a primal yell, he slammed his fist on the horn. The piercing blast shattered the quiet, echoing off distant trees and scattering into the void of the pale horizon. Sitting inside felt pointless now. Andrei checked the fuel gauge. The needle wavered just above halfway. Gathering his belongings, he stepped outside once more. The temperature plummeted further, each breath forming dense clouds of vapor. Wrapping his scarf tighter around his neck, he muttered, "Where do I go now?" His urban wardrobe, a leather jacket, shirt, woolen hat, and long scarf, had kept him cozy in the car, but proved woefully inadequate for trudging through knee-deep snow. Determined, he scaled a small rise to survey the area. Through the swirling flakes, he spotted what looked like rooftops in the distance beyond a sparse line of birches and maples. Without another glance at the car, he set off toward them. The trek took half an hour, maybe more. Darkness descended rapidly, painting the landscape in shades of blue-gray. By the time he reached the cluster of buildings, twilight had fully embraced the world. Only upon drawing closer did Andrei realize this wasn't a thriving village, it was a ghost town. Ruins of structures poked through the snow, broken fences leaning precariously. One house remained intact, small and single-story, with a loft where an open window flapped wildly in the wind. A path leading to the door seemed recently cleared, or perhaps trodden down. Knocking firmly, Andrei waited. Silence greeted him, save for the howling gale overhead. He knocked again, straining to hear any response. Nothing. Not surprising, really. Across Russia, abandoned villages dotted the countryside, forgotten relics of a bygone era. Deciding not to waste more time, Andrei pushed the door open. It creaked inward, revealing the shadowy interior of a deserted home. The roar of the wind faded behind him. Faint sunlight filtered through frosted windows, casting cold, distorted shadows across the room. An old iron stove dominated the space, surrounded by dusty furniture and shelves cluttered with jars and bundles of dried herbs. Ignoring everything else, Andrei lunged for the stove, his numb hands trembling with anticipation. Dry tinder lay inside, untouched for years. Rather than dismantle the sturdy chairs stacked nearby, he remembered the cleared path outside and opted instead to snap off pieces of the rotting fence. Within minutes, flames crackled merrily, warming his frozen limbs. Stripping off his damp jacket, Andrei draped it over the stove to dry. Considering the number of ruined buildings outside, the fire would last well into the night and longer. Leaning against the now warm stove, he sighed contentedly. "Not so bad after all," he murmured, pulling off his soggy boots. Outside, the blizzard raged, battering the walls with snow and wind. But inside, the fire danced, snapping and popping, filling the room with golden warmth. His breath no longer misted in the air. Fatigue washed over him, a side effect of prolonged exposure to the cold. Fighting it briefly, he eventually succumbed, head drooping onto his chest as sleep claimed him. A loud thud startled him awake. Upstairs, the loose window had slammed shut again, letting in a draft of icy air. Stretching stiffly, Andrei ascended the rickety ladder to the loft. Each step groaned under his weight, threatening to collapse beneath him. Flipping on his phone's flashlight, he froze. There, sprawled on a cot amid boxes and debris, lay a corpse. Emaciated, skin translucent, and taut over bone, its empty eye sockets stared accusingly at nothing. Yellowed teeth grinned grotesquely in the dim light. Andrei swore, backing into the wall until his spine hit solid wood. The window banged again, making him jump. Steeling himself, he approached cautiously. It's just an old man who lived alone and died. Probably froze, he muttered, inching closer. Then suddenly, clarity struck. This wasn't just decay, it was unnatural. The body's posture, the faint smell of earth and herbs, it hinted at something darker. Eyes wide, Andrei closed the window and fled downstairs. Climbing onto the stove, he wrapped himself in his semi-dry jacket and clutched a heavy poker tightly. Whatever or whoever this was, he wouldn't face it unarmed. For a while, the house settled into silence. Flames flickered cheerfully, casting jagged shadows across the walls. The scent of damp wood mingled with the warmth, creating an illusion of safety. Andrei rummaged through his bag, finding a Snickers bar. He ate half, saving the rest for tomorrow. Just as he began to drift off again, a noise upstairs jolted him upright. Through the decaying floorboards came the unmistakable shuffle of footsteps. What the hell? Despite knowing the corpse upstairs was dead, something or someone was moving around. Heart pounding, Andrei gripped the poker tighter. The steps paused briefly before resuming, accompanied by the creak of the staircase. Then, a crash. The final step splintered, and a heavy thud echoed below. Pale yellow nails scraped across the wooden floor, leaving deep gouges. A nauseatingly sweet odor wafted through the room, clinging to the air like syrup. In the doorway appeared the hunched figure of the old man, shambling forward with agonizing slowness. His hollow eyes locked onto Andrei, who lit the stove. The thing hissed, voice rasping like dry leaves. Summoning unexpected agility, Andrei kicked the creature in the spine. Bones crunched audibly. The body collapsed, twitching feebly. "Die, bastard," Andrei shouted, raining blows with the poker. The skull cracked open, spilling powdery remnants of brain matter. Yet still, the thing clawed at the floor, dragging itself forward with guttural wheezes. Finally, mercifully, it stopped moving. Limbs twisted unnaturally, mouth frozen in a grimace of confusion. Breathing heavily, Andrei wiped sweat from his brow. Dragging the corpse outside, he marveled at its weightlessness. Slamming the door shut, he lit a cigarette, hands shaking violently. "If I have to stay here till morning, I'm burning this place to the ground," he muttered. Sleep eluded him. Every creak, every gust of wind sent adrenaline coursing through his veins. Checking the time obsessively, he added logs to the fire, maintaining the fragile barrier between warmth and death. Around 3:20 a.m., new sounds emerged from outside. Back for more, Andrei sneered, leaping to his feet. Before he could finish the sentence, the door flew open, propelled by an invisible force. Snow swirled madly as a short, cloaked figure slipped inside, slamming the door shut with deafening force. Unlike the corpse, this entity radiated menace. Its wrinkled face bore tiny, gleaming eyes, and its lipless mouth stretched into a menacing grin. "You insolent brat," it shrieked, raising a gnarled staff. Invisible energy slammed into Andrei's chest, cracking ribs and hurling him backward. Pain exploded along his spine as he crashed into the stove. Gasping, he staggered to his feet and bolted through a window, tumbling into the storm. Behind him loomed a forest that hadn't been there earlier. Trees closed in menacingly, their branches clawing at his clothes. Broken ribs screamed with every step, breaths wheezing painfully. He stumbled onward, pursued by glowing eyes and the scrape of unseen footsteps. Leaning against a pine tree, blood trickling from his lips, Andrei gazed upward. Above him, upside down, perched the entity, watching silently. "Go to hell," he rasped, forcing a weak smile. His heart slowed, ticking like a broken clock. Cold seeped into his veins, extinguishing pain and sensation alike. Darkness swallowed him whole. When he awoke, daylight streamed through frost-covered windows. The house was eerily quiet, the fire extinguished. Paralyzed by cold, Andrei realized he was dead. Nearby, the creature muttered, "You entered my home, lit my stove, harmed my guardian. Did you think you could escape without consequences?" Clawed hands tore open Andrei's shirt. Frozen, unable to speak, he watched as the being extracted his heart, holding it aloft like a trophy. "Rest now," it said mockingly. "When spring comes, you'll take your turn guarding me." As consciousness faded, Andrei understood. He was no longer human. He was the Watcher now,